It merged with the body of Ib, which was pulled free from Idli, and the two of them were reborn as Ib, the world chalice justiciar. Page 12. The Vessel with a Heart. Idli, who had control over all the powers and authorities of God, had her powers seized from her by Ib, now dwelling inside of Justiciar. The soul of Ib should have been erased during their fusion, but it was actually the soul of the mechanical doll that Lee had erased. Although the mechanical doll was originally made to be a mere vessel, at some point it gained its own sense of identity, most likely because of the cellular induction process. Galatea was a name that the doll destined to become Ib secretly gave herself, as no one else had bothered to give her one. Galatea was a name that belonged to a woman who was loved and became a flesh and blood human being, according to information she accessed from the records of the ancient civilization. When Lee and Ib fused, Galatea sacrificed her own soul in place of Ib. Meanwhile, the soul of Ib was transferred to the World Chalice, which had later been remade into God Dragon Justiciar. The vessel of God's power appeared from the earth's depths. Having lost the power of the key, Idli went on a rampage, as she could no longer control the massive amount of power contained inside her body. So it rapidly collapsed onto itself. On the other hand, the revived Ib joined forces with Aurum and called forth the soul of Imduk, back from Marduk. Imduk then evolved into Almaduk, amplified by the power of life itself. However, soon after their hopes were lifted, from the depths of the earth, destroyed by X-Crawler feeding on the power from the core, came the World Gears, the vessel of God's power. Standing before the World Gears, the embodiment of the Great Darkness, the other name of the power of destruction, Aurum decided to try and fight back. Having once partially inherited the key from mekk-knight Blue Sky, and with the power of all world legacies assembled, Aurum decided to strike the Great Darkness down. The spear of the mech deity created in response to the dying wish of Galatea. As Aurum tried to unite the various powers together, Idli sensed it, and tried to make one final desperate attack. However, it was Ningirsu who stopped her. In response to the dying wish of Galatea, he used the remains of Babel and his former army of Orcus to forge Dingirsu, the Orcus of the Evening Star. Page 13. Birth of the world hero of the creation myth. The attack from the Crusadia alliance led by Aurum, the unexpected rebirth of Ib, and finally the counterattack of Ningirsu, the body of Idli, which had lost all sense of higher thought and reason, was finally destroyed by the attack of Dingirsu, but her very existence continued to cling to the throne of God until the very end, despite losing all rationality or sanity. Now lost adrift in a sea of madness, Lee forced her soul to merge with the World Gears due to its synchronization with X-Crawler. However, her body, no longer in possession of the key, was now unable to restrain and control the incredible power the throne possessed, and as a result of the World Gears, reacting to the evil will of Idli, went completely out of control. Its existence, which harbored the power of God that could create and destroy worlds and even stars, started to bring about the destruction of the world faster as a result of its leaking power. The World Gears, which had become the avatar of destruction, had reached a level where it was no longer possible for it to be held back by the seal of God in the Earth's core. And it seemed like the end of the world was all but certain. But then Aurum, having fully inherited the key as well as having completely integrated the powers of the world legacies into himself, became a legendary being that had been whispered of throughout eternity, Mekk-knight Crusadia Avramax. In other words, he had awoken as the world hero. Fusion with the vessel of God's power. Avramax charged straight into the heart of the world gears, where a remnant of the mind of Lee lingered. There he learned the truth about God that created their world. The world gears of theological demiurgy is really the prototypical form of all gods, a vessel that does the will of God in response to the will of being inside it. In short, an apotheosis program. The eternity that had previously occupied the world gears used it to control and operate the movements of the heavens. But whoever they were, they disappeared in the process of sealing the out-of-control power of destruction deep within the planet. And now, once more, a crisis had occurred due to its power. If it continued to rampage like this, it would not only destroy the world, but the heavens as well. Avramax, thinking that he had become the awakened master of the key he could control it, completely unleashed its power. Instead of trying to destroy God, he chose to try and become one with the vessel, and thus, a Vita, rebuilder of worlds, was born. Page 14. Rebirth of the world, reverse, rebirth. The newly born god, Avita, armed with the power of God surpassing all human understanding that he had obtained after countless merciless battles, hoped he could restore the original world he used to live on as a human, along with Ningirsu, Ib, his Crusadia allies, and all of the other lives lost in the World War. It might have been a very human and self-righteous thing for God to do. Maybe it was more sensible to punish them by destroying the world. But ultimately, he chose to absorb the crumbling world into the vessel, and booted up a restoration program for the life forms born on that world. And then there was light. Avita chose to start the world restoration program. On that day, in a dazzling light, she lost consciousness, and then when she awoke, what she saw was a calm night sky laid out before her, with the twinkling light of the stars gently illuminating the world around her. She embarked on a journey. Sometimes the sword she held would blink and glow with a faint light. What laid ahead on the path it guided her on, no one knew. Still, that girl entrusted her hopes to its blinking light, continuing to journey the world he left behind. Aurum disappeared from the world as the rebuilder of worlds at the end of the World War, with his name carved into history, leaving behind the key, now in the form of a sword. The battle for the power of God must never happen again. Ib carried the sword, travelling the world restored by the person that mattered most to her. Ningirsu, who once walked down the wrong path, was revived as a knight who protects the world, following the earnest wish of his friend Aurum. He pledged to watch over and support Ib in secret. With him was the fairy Galatea, snugged up close beside him. Due to the effects of the restoration program executed by the rebuilder of worlds, the key that was so entwined with the fate of the world was remade into a sword that absorbed the power of the world legacies. The master of the sword, known as the World Key, went on a journey to find a place to seal it forever and prevent the tragedy from ever happening again. Miraculously, the power of the rebuilder of worlds repaired the destruction caused by the Great Darkness. Countless stars twinkled in the sky, and the breath of life could be heard all around. And Ib, who was given the world key, pushed forward with determination in her heart to where the world legacy leads next.